performed on stage in front of people, I was 3 years old. My mom had signed me up for dance lessons so that I could learn poise and grace and confidence in front of people. And for our first recital, we did a tap number where we popped out of cardboard jack-in-the-boxes and danced to "Everybody loves a baby, that's why I'm in love with you, pretty baby." Still stuck with me. Our costumes were fabulous. We had little white tap shoes tied with white ribbon and white tights, and a turquoise bodice with a tutu covered in silver sequins, and a silver sequined hat. And the hat caused us some anxiety because it was attached to our chins with an elastic, and it sometimes slipped while we were dancing. It's probably kind of a silly idea to put that on a 3-year-old. So we were all a little bit nervous about the recital and that our hats might fall off. So right before the last rehearsal before the recital, Miss Betty Ann, who was our teacher, sat us cross-legged on the linoleum floor and gave us a very serious talk. And she said, "I want you to listen very carefully and remember what I say. If your hat falls off, just keep dancing. If your shoe falls off, just keep dancing. Even if your whole entire costume falls off, keep dancing." And at this point, we all got a little nervous because we weren't sure whether the costume falling off was actually a possibility. But for the most part, we did fine. Actually, looking at the video of this, one girl did not listen to the advice. She popped out of the jack-in-the-box, the hat fell off her head, and she actually turned around and dove in after it. But I was fine, and I didn't realize how much the lesson had stuck with me until about 23 years later. I had just recently been ordained as a rabbi, and I was leading services for the first time in my congregation. I had long since given up dancing because I realized when I hit puberty that I was sort of shaped like a Polish sausage, and they stopped putting skirts on the costumes, and it was just not a good thing. But my love of theater had translated into this love of being in front of people. Still, I was very nervous about my first sermon in front of this new congregation because what I had learned from my graduate education was that people were judgmental and critical, and that whatever I did, they were going to find fault with it. So I worked very, very hard on my sermon, and I worked very hard on picking out my outfit, and stood in front of the congregation ready to go. And I noticed that there was a thunderstorm going on in the middle of the scriptural reading, and it was kind of cool because it was kind of like special effects, because we were talking about Moses striking the rock, and when I said, "And Moses struck the rock," there was a big boom. But what wasn't really cool was that about 2 paragraphs into my sermon, there was another big boom, and the lights went out. And all the power had gone out, no air conditioning, no sound. And I'm standing there thinking that all of my 23 years of education have not prepared me to respond in this situation. And the other rabbi has realized this, and he runs up the stairs and he whispers in my ear, he's like, "Do you want to stop the service? Are you okay?" And I took a moment to center myself, and I thought about it, and I looked and I thought, okay, I've got my shoes, I've got my hat, I've got my costume, I guess I'm okay. And I turned to the rabbi and I said, "No, I think I can handle it. Just somebody get me a flashlight or something." And what they did was they moved the Sabbath candles right next to the desk so that I could continue my sermon. And I stayed in that congregation. I finished that service, and I stayed in that congregation for 5 years. And almost every couple of weeks, somebody would come up, more people than could have possibly been at this service. Somebody would come up to me and say, "I was there at your first service." And we were all just so impressed with how you handled that situation. We were impressed with your poise and your grace and your confidence. And I realized that I really couldn't give any credit for that to my seminary for their training, because they had basically not taught me that people could be warm and welcoming and inviting, and that it was okay that when things went wrong and you just had to figure it out. So I really give all the credit to Miss Betty Ann, who is the one who taught me at 3 years old that no matter what happens, I should just keep dancing. Thank you.